Welcome back to The Point, a part of the Vendetta Sports Media Podcast Network. My name is Jarrod Prosser, and I'm very happy to have you with us again today. On each episode of The Point, I'll examine a topic, a question, or an issue currently impacting the NBA. Today, on The Point, we examine the question, do the Philadelphia 76ers have the best offense in the NBA? The Sixers are set as the third best team in the Eastern Conference. Their 54-28 win-loss record, a game ahead of the West-leading Denver Nuggets, but behind Eastern rivals Milwaukee and Boston. That record is probably about right for this team and is where most pundits had them finishing prior to the season. What is surprising is how the Sixers have achieved what they have. Whilst coach Doc Rivers came out and stated that the goal was for the team to sport both a top 10 offense and defense, it was the latter where many expected the Sixers to thrive. Whilst the Sixers finished the regular season with 113.5 defensive rating, that's good for ninth in the NBA, their defense actually ranks 18th since the beginning of January. What has helped mitigate that, frankly, hugely concerning trend is that the Sixers' offense, despite a glacial start to the campaign, has led the league with 120.8 points per 100 possessions since the beginning of December per Cleaning the Glass. Their offense has improved further, coming in with 123.7 points per 100 possessions in March. The gap to the second place Knicks, yes, the apparent offensive juggernaut that is the New York Knicks, being the equivalent to the gap between New York and sixth place Golden State. Importantly, the Sixers' offensive output far exceeds the attack of fellow championship contenders Denver, Boston, and Milwaukee over that span, with the suddenly struggling Nuggets ranking 19th since March 1st. Since Tyrese Maxey returned to the starting lineup at the beginning of March, Philly have ratcheted their attack up further again to an astonishing 128 points per 100 possessions with Maxey on the floor, again per Cleaning the Glass. The headline act in Philadelphia are, of course, Joel Embiid and James Harden, who have become the first pair of teammates to lead the league in points and assists since San Antonio Spurs teammates George Gervin and Johnny Moore all the way back in 1982. At age 33, Harden clearly isn't the heliocentric force that he was in his prime. His shooting off the bounce is still elite. He's a passing savant in the pick and roll, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. He's still strong as an ox and still has the ball on a string. However, a combination of age, injury, and, let's be honest, not exactly treating his body like a temple, has seen Harden's once formidable first step come back to the pack. Harden has also lost a bit of his vertical lift, which means that he's not nearly the finisher at the hoop that he once was. His 5.9 points in the paint this season mark his lowest output since he was the Thunder's sixth man well over a decade ago. With his finishing at the rim and his magnificent floater no longer the threat that they once were, Harden's lob threat, and he is a brilliant lob passer, has also disappeared somewhat. He's compensated by doing the one thing that was taboo in Houston, exploiting the mid-range. Harden is using a raft of step-backs, up-fakes, step-throughs, and plain old pull-up jumpers to take advantage of defenders that are still perhaps a little hardwired to stop Houston-era Harden from getting to the cup. His footwork and jump shot remain as good as ever. Harden's hitting 37% of his 5.7 pull-up or step-back threes per game. The threat of that three ball opens up just enough space to compensate for his reduction in acceleration. Harden's legendary de-acceleration is still there, and that leaves defenders grasping at thin air as he stops unexpectedly before getting to the basket. Harden has also, for the first time since he was in Oklahoma City, become somewhat of a spot-up threat. From an admittedly small sample of 2.2 catch-and-shoot threes per game, he's connecting on a sizzling 47%. I'd like to see him catch and shoot more rather than catch and drive, but given that this number is close to a career high in catch and shoot attempts, it still represents progress. Harden looked slow and proppy after coming over from Brooklyn midway through last season, though a combination of in-game reps, full preseason speed, and frankly his apparent recovery from his long-term hamstring troubles has seen him flourish in a new role as an orchestrator rather than a scorer who could pass. For the season, Harden's posted 21 points, 6 boards, and close to 11 assists, with 44, 39, 87 shooting splits. He's not the perennial MVP candidate that he used to be, but he's still a borderline All-NBA player and, importantly, a perfect second banana to a top-shelf star, which is a seamless segue into Joel Embiid. Together, Embiid and Harden are creating beautiful music, with the Harden to Embiid combination resulting in a league-leading 244 baskets. For the sake of comparison, the next pairing on this list, Nikola Jokic to Aaron Gordon, is 89 field goals behind them. That's the same as the gap between Jokic-Gordon and Steph Curry to Draymond Green in 89th position. It's almost comical how good Embiid and Harden have been together. Jojo is at the center of one of the most intriguing MVP debates in many a year. The fact that he may not win it is no slight against the big fella. Rather, it's a nod to the remarkable work that Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo produce for their clubs. Embiid's raw numbers, after all, 33.1 points per game, 10.2 boards, 4.2 assists, 1.7 blocks, a steal for good measure. They're overwhelming. The difference this season as to how Embiid is creating his offense is the key to his dominance. This season, Embiid has cut back on his post-up diet in a big way, with 9.4 post-ups per 100 possessions, down from 16.1 the season prior. Embiid has replaced most of those low post touches with screens for Harden and, to a lesser degree, Maxey, setting 47.5 screens per 100 possessions, against just over 24 last campaign. The adjustment has completely changed the geometry of the floor for the Sixers, a change that is better for Embiid, is better for this new version of Harden, as well as better for the retooled supporting cast. A few minutes ago, I mentioned that Harden remains a masterful pick-and-roll orchestrator, despite losing his burst. Embiid, on the surface, doesn't seem to be the perfect pick-and-roll target, given he's not an explosive rim-running type. Harden's adjusted by slipping every variety of pocket pass that you could imagine to a short rolling Harden. That, in turn, sets up Harden at the nail of the elbow where he wreaks havoc. For the defense, it really is a case of pick your poison here. You simply can't allow Harden to stroll to the hoop, but ceding possession to Embiid is even worse. If Embiid has a path to the hoop, he's dunking it. If you hold him up, then he gets into his near-automatic free-throw line jumper. And aside here, this season, Embiid has hit more mid-range jumpers than anybody in the league, bar mid-range mavens DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Durant. It's remarkable the change in his game. You cover that jump shot from Embiid, and he pivots into his low-post game. His soccer player's footwork and his sheer heft allow him to manipulate and sometimes just bludgeon his defender. Playing from the nail rather than the low post has also had the perhaps unexpected consequence of opening up Embiid's passing game. He'll never be mistaken for Jokic or even a Brad Doherty type. He simply doesn't, if you'll excuse me here, process the floor as quickly as those sorts of players do. But in setting up the nail, it becomes almost impossible to run a blindside double team at Embiid because there simply is no blindside to come from. That means Embiid can see any double team or rotation as it happens, allowing him to find shooters and cutters with much more regularity and, importantly, perfect timing. Doc Rivers utilises the space well within this new offensive setup. He always has both corners manned, imperative for good spacing, and usually starts his fifth player in the dunker's spot. That fifth player can take on a few different roles. Sometimes they'll step into variations of the Spain pick and rolls that served Harden so well in Houston, or maybe run into some screen-the-screener action. If it's a shooter like Maxey, Tobias Harris, or George Niang, they might fan out to the arc. Sometimes they'll simply hold their position, giving the defender a choice of letting the pick and roll develop, or leaving their man alone near the basket whilst they junk up that action. The Sixers are scoring a frankly absurd 1.33 points possession when Embiid passes after receiving the ball from Harden in the pick and roll. Stockton to Malone is rightly still considered the gold class of pick and roll offense. What we have in Philly is what Utah's Hall of Fame pair could have done with modern spacing. It's almost impossible to stop. So far, I've focused with some justification on Embiid and Harden, but no two-man team can survive in the modern NBA. Credit must go to Daryl Morey for constructing something close to the perfect supporting cast for these two stars. It's no accident that Maxey's return to the starting lineup at the beginning of March coincided with the Sixers offense going gangbusters. Philly went 12-5 in March and saw Maxey average 22.7 points on white-hot 55, 51, 94 shooting splits. Let's repeat that. 55% from the floor, 51% from three, 94% from the line, averaging 22 points. That's crazy. Now, Maxi's not nearly the playmaker that Harden is, but he is quicker going north-south than the Beard ever was. When he's the ball handler in the pick and roll with Embiid, Maxi gets to the cup in the blink of an eye. That forces early rotations, which in turn make it easier for Maxi to see where the next pass should go to. Tobias Harris, a very good player, often unfairly maligned due to his massive overpay of a contract, has thrived as a limited usage secondary creator. He's sporting a career-high true shooting percentage against a career-low usage rate. Sure, he's overqualified as a fourth option, but he might finally have found the perfect role for his skill set. Always a reliable shooter from deep with some juice off the bounce, Harris has often been miscast as a first or second option. Now, as essentially the fourth man in the pecking order, he's subsisting on a diet of open jump shots or attacking hard closeouts. He's living his best basketball life right now. Whilst Philadelphia's offense has been dominant through the regular season, you do wonder how it'll cope in a playoff setting, given more familiarity and time to run specific adjustments. Playoff defenses are a different beast. How the Sixers offense adapts to the harsh light of playoff basketball should prove fascinating. Their two main players each have a laundry list of playoff failures. Another aside here, Harden is yet to miss the playoffs in his 14-year career, which I feel often gets overlooked when we talk about his lack of clutch play. He always gets his team to the point where the spotlight is the brightest. Whilst you could argue that this is the best supporting cast that both Harden and Embiid have ever enjoyed, you could equally argue that out of those two players who have a whole litany of failures behind them, who leads the way when things get tough? Rivers, of course, has won a championship as a coach, though literally none of his players were active in the NBA when it happened. He's also had a lot of flameouts since then too. Whilst the Sixers do have questions to answer about mental fortitude, for want of a better way to put it, and their defense, I've become increasingly convinced as the season has progressed that this is a championship level roster. They have a great offensive system, are loaded with shooters, have good individual defenders, if not a good team defense right now, and in Embiid and Harden, two of the best isolation scorers in the world, those rare occasions when the offense does break down. Are they championship favourites? No. They still have mountains to climb within their own conference. They are, though, going to push Boston and Milwaukee all the way. If either should slip up, the Sixers, led by their fearsome attacking play, will be ready to pounce. And with that, we'll wrap up this edition of The Point. Please leave your comments and questions below the line, and as always, I'll do my best to respond to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to The Point and to all of the other wonderful material that Vendetta Sports Media provides. My name is Jarrod Prosser. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all again next time.